With the end of Ultimate Endgame, the Ultimate Marvel Universe has reached its conclusion, and what did I think of how things ended? Now, I'm not saying it was bad, but it wasn't great either. The whole thing just felt like a big mess. Well, they basically were forced to end prematurely and had to really feel like they lost focus towards the end due to editorial. And this could have been something great, man. This really could have been something awesome, but no, Ultimate Marvel had to go down the drain barely 2 years in with the announcement that it was going to be ending. Yeah, if you weren't typed into the comic book space, towards the beginning of 2025 and the end of 2025 really, it was revealed that Ultimate Marvel was going to be ending after its 2-year run with Ultimate Endgame. And once that event was done, the Ultimate Universe was going to be done, kaput, all that stuff, with 5 mainline titles, and all of them were really good, or if not decent, for some of them also. But as we kept trudging closer and closer to Ultimate Endgame, you felt that these writers were having to just conclude storylines off screen or really quickly in order to get to the point of Ultimate Endgame where they didn't have much story to tell for the most part, so they conclude some stuff. That way, with the end of this universe, they don't leave too many open plot threads. And you can really feel it with just stories like Ultimate Spider-Man, Ultimate Black Panther to a degree, and even Ultimate Wolverine just felt like way too rushed with how things were concluded without proper explorations. And while I do think Ultimate X-Men, for what it was in its own isolated thing, is generally probably really good on its own outside of the Ultimate Universe, because it literally just feels so isolated from everything else. The Ultimates was the main book that was progressing the main story issue by issue, constantly reminding us at the end of each issue how much longer we have until the Maker's return. And the book literally was a real world countdown to Ultimate Endgame. But the interesting about it is that the Ultimates still had its last 2 to 3 issues running alongside Ultimate Endgame at the same time for the first 3 to 4 issues until it inevitably ended and everything just coalesced into Ultimate Endgame. And that makes sense. The Ultimates was the one book that was building up towards the endgame, with every other book fleshing out their own sides of the universe while hopefully setting stuff up for the Maker and everything that his council has done. But like I said, a lot of these books did feel like they had to rush towards a conclusion in order to justify jumping into the crossover. And even though Ultimate Endgame was this big event that was supposed to bring everyone together, and the Ultimates were having their own war against the Maker's Council, literally back in just in the US, pretty much, in their version of the US, we didn't even have Thor for the majority of this book. He had one issue where everything was done, his entire story arc, his entire thing with Asgard was done in one singular issue. And while the way the story was told and the artwork for it was definitely really cool and unique, it was really unceremonious for Thor, the first character that Iron Lad and Doom recruited into the Ultimates before unfreezing Captain America. Thor and Sif. Sif was killed off screen effectively in that issue, and we had Thor having to basically save Asgard and start a rebellion. All of that within technically 2 issues throughout the entirety of the book, but one issue had the majority of the story in the Asgard war to overthrow All-Father Loki effectively. If you want a clear example of storylines being rushed to their conclusions just to meet the deadline of Ultimate Endgame, that singular story with Thor having everything being done in one singular issue is a clear sight as to what's to come. Because while all these stories progress basically month by month, not every one of these books follows that formula. Ultimate X-Men will have stuff happen back to back with a little bit of time just progressing between the two, but you still feel like you're not missing much of the overall story. The Ultimates progresses month by month, but for the most part, you could follow their story and know things happen off screen that we probably aren't needed. But there are stuff towards the end of the book leading up to Ultimate Endgame that just genuinely does feel like we should have gotten more context for. Everything with Thor could have been like a 3-issue arc, and therein lies the issue with the format that they went to with the countdown to the Maker. Having each issue count down real-world months to Ultimate Endgame was their downfall. That was the literal ticking clock that Marvel Editorial used to decide when to end this universe. Because with the unique way of just having each issue be 1 month in world time in the comic, it's a cool way to introduce a story and to build tension for the return of the Maker and for the final battle, but it also kind of makes it so you can't have any actual arcs in the book. Ultimate Spider-Man had its own arcs, technically, but they were separated by months, and it really felt like not too much progressed, or we're splitting focus so much that it just genuinely feels like not much time has progressed, and the characters are just more or less stagnant for the most part, which sucks because Ultimate Spider-Man has a lot of stuff going on, same with the Ultimates. But genuinely, we don't really have any story arcs for some of the big books. The Ultimates doesn't really have any real story arcs. The whole book is the story arc. We don't get time to just see the Ultimates just take a second and talk things out, maybe build some sort of bond and camaraderie, even though they are technically at war with the world. We don't get an arc that focuses on taking down Bruce Banner in this universe, the Incredible Hulk who gained the powers of Iron Fist. We don't see the preparation into going that. We don't see Ultimate She-Hulk's full journey into her fight against Ultimate Hulk in this universe for that big climactic finale. There is a lot that happens in this book. Heck, I mentioned Thor. That could have been its own arc, and he could have asked the Ultimates for help in overthrowing Asgard, because then they would have gotten Asgardian warriors to help in their fight against the Maker's Council. It genuinely feels like Dennis Camp had a lot of cool ideas in the Ultimates. He had a story he wanted to tell, but it does really feel like he was limited by the time frame and just the method of storytelling that he was placed in, or maybe even he placed it for the Ultimates. If Ultimate Endgame wasn't for at least another extra year or two, if there was like a 5-year plan where all these books had a lot of time to breathe, like a 5-year window to breathe, to give us some mini arcs to show us all these characters progressing in their own ways, then I feel like Ultimate Endgame would have felt better. Ultimate Endgame, while it is a cool idea, it lacks the majority of the characters. And while the Ultimates fighting in their own book leading into the finale of Endgame makes sense because that is the book that you're going for the main story for, other characters like Ultimate Black Panther, the Ultimate X-Men, even, well, Ultimate Wolverine, they just show up in the finale. In some instances in the last issues, they talk about the Maker, but he's barely mentioned. And it really does kind of suck because I would have loved all these characters to coalesce and talk and meet and have actual interactions with each other for the final showdown instead of it just being one big action collage. And that was definitely a disappointment. The only time we get to see characters like the Ultimates or the Ultimate X-Men and Ultimate Black Panther just talk to each other or interact in any ways is during Ultimate Spider-Man Incursion, a tie-in book with the mainline universe where Miles Morales from mainline comics has to go into the Ultimate Universe to find his lost baby sister, and he meets all these different characters in the Ultimate Universe. He progresses along to get her and go back home, and it just leads into stuff that's going on in the mainline universe right now with the Origin boxes, Ultimate Impact Reborn, which is the title that's going on, and Ultimate Armageddon right now that I made a video talking about how things are going with how Marvel set that book up for like it being a gamble for how things are going and the future of mainline Marvel. But yeah, that was the only book connecting all of them. A Miles Morales book used to, while it was interesting to see Miles just have a crisis of self and to be absolutely alone in a universe familiar but drastically different, that was the only book really connecting pretty much most of the titles. Ultimate Spider-Man, Ultimates, Ultimate X-Men, Ultimate Black Panther, 4 out of the 5 books were connected through Miles, and it felt nice, it felt natural. And while we did get like, the usual, some vague amount of time passes between each of those issues, it felt like we were building towards something. And it also establishes that potentially the Ultimates would build a connection with Ultimate Black Panther. But we don't really get any of that in the Ultimate Black Panther book mentioned at all, and then they just show up at the end of the day with Killmonger leading the charge to go to the Maker City, and then meeting the Ultimate X-Men due to some vague stuff when they want to find Hisako. And then everything ends with, I will say, Doom's story throughout the Ultimates going into Ultimate Endgame was definitely satisfying for me with how he overcame his like inner demons of the Maker with just the vague silhouette of the Fantastic Four that should have been, and him over the course of time throughout the Ultimates in order to kind of revive the Four in their own way, ended up giving himself all the Fantastic Four's powers and combining his abilities with Tony, making a road for him to go to the core of the Maker as he's trying to undo the universe, basically destroying the Maker, removing all his power, and even bringing Spider-Man back to life. Oh yeah, right. Spider-Man was killed in the 3rd issue of Ultimate Endgame unceremoniously by having his high-tech suit turned into Ultimate Carnage and then killing him right off the bat. Doom brought Spider-Man back, so I guess that was fine. And then, in the mainline book, Cap dies in a pretty unceremonious way. His arm is cut off and he's decapitated. It leads to a cool moment where Scarlet Witch, Quicksilver, and Hawkeye go to avenge him, but it still sucks seeing Cap go out like that. After like an issue or two before, he had to kill his best friend who went down a dark path as the Ultimate Red Skull because of the Maker's machination. It was sad, it was depressing, and while I get what the Dennis Camp was going for, I really wish we didn't do Cap like this, even in this darker universe, in this way, but it is what it is, and you brought Spider-Man back. At least with Cap, you have some idea for like actual stakes and consequences of everything, but it does suck that Cap is gone in this universe. Although Hawkeye does take up his shield to continue his legacy, and it's nice. It's nice to see them do this type of legacy with the Ultimate characters, even if it was a short short amount of time. It does feel like we need a bit more of Hawkeye and Cap together, but they did have the most on-screen appearances in team-ups outside of Cap and the Human Torch for a minute there, but yeah, it just felt very unceremonious. And while things are hunky-dory, Sunmakers Council is still around, just left over, potentially going to be a cabal for the future. Ultimate Endgame just felt kind of meh overall. It just felt like way too many contrivances, so many things just thrown at the wall, and now everything's just better now. I mean, I get you have to go that route for a happy ending, but it felt very sloppy at the end. Then we had Ultimate Finale, which just sets us up for the fact that the Ultimate Universe is still going on, characters are trying to heal, progress, and storylines are being potentially set up for the future, because at the end of Ultimate Finale, the original Victor Von Doom of the Ultimate Universe returns to Latveria after the defeat of the Maker, takes the last remains of the Maker, and basically we have the title card, the Ultimate Universe will return. I don't trust Marvel at this point. I genuinely don't trust Marvel anymore. They're so hit and miss with a lot of their books. Like, there are so many videos and people talking about how the quality of like the majority of Marvel books has just been all over the damn place, save for a few. And with the premature end of the Ultimate Universe, because it wasn't the initial plan, even though they tried to say it was, made them lose actual trust in their audience that was getting these books, because it was getting new people into Marvel slowly but surely. Not as much as Absolute DC with how they were approaching things, but it was still getting more people in. Ultimate Spider-Man was getting a lot of people interested in Marvel Comics again, and then they ended. And now we're getting another brand new universe, this time a more nightmare horror focused universe, also helmed by Jonathan Hickman, just like the Ultimate Marvel Universe, Midnight Marvel. I've already made 2 videos on it, one on like the initial announcement speculation, the other on the actual news of the titles and what they're going to be about so far. Go check those out if you want to hear my thoughts on Midnight Marvel. Also, since that point, we've gotten some more titles revealed, like Midnight Iron Man and Midnight Submariner. I forgot what the third one was. Honestly, I'm excited because Midnight Marvel starts in August, a month from this video's recording and probably release. But still, while I'm excited for that, I don't believe that that universe will last long, especially now that they're teasing us with the fact that the Ultimate Universe could return with new stories. I don't trust Marvel at this point with these other universes, because like, it really feels like they're just not really wanting to commit to anything new for the long term, even if it is selling well. Do I think Midnight Marvel will sell pretty well? I genuinely do. It's new, it's interesting, it's a jumping off point for new readers, especially since it's brand new continuity and universe, just like Ultimate Marvel. Do I think it'll do as well as Ultimate Marvel? Probably not. People are probably not going to really bother much to invest in a new universe that will probably end within 2 years also. Apparently there's rumors that Midnight X-Men is only going to last for 12 issues and it's only going to be a maxi series. Or at least Jonathan Hickman's only going to write 12 issues. It sucks when you hear news and rumors like that, because like, there's new stuff you want, but it ends. If Ultimate Marvel does come back, I think what they could do is just do it in phases. If they do take a break, if they did change their plan to be like, okay, instead of this being the definitive end, from this point forward, we're gonna have maybe a year break, and then we'll have like maybe 2 to 3 years straight of new stories for these books. Then we'll take a break after the next event for that, and then just move on forward instead of it just being like continuous ongoings in the Ultimate Marvel. I don't know. That could be a better way to do things than just ending things right off the bat. But like, I don't know. I'm just rambling at this point. But yeah, Ultimate Endgame was kind of disappointing, kind of anticlimactic for me. I felt nothing about it for the most part. Would I like Ultimate Marvel to come back with new stories? Yes, but I don't trust Marvel to maintain it and commit to it, just like I don't trust Midnight Marvel to stay long. But hey, I can be proven wrong. But you guys let me know in the comment section down below what you think of Ultimate Endgame and Ultimate Marvel as a whole. Did you enjoy everything? Were there books that were your favorite? Could you tell that there were moments where you really wanted things to progress, but it didn't? Or you just felt like things were rushed? Let me know in the comment section down below. Like and subscribe and hit the notification bell for updates on future videos like this. And let me know what you guys want me to talk about in the future. With all that said and done, hope you all have an awesome day.